Hello, welcome to today's training. I am Falanwe Kende, a data scientist at Syndro, and today we'll be looking at the download tool in Alteryx. From the word download, download basically means to retrieve data from a stored location, a stored website, and to enable us get access to this data. All right, so the download is actually very useful. Most importantly, probably you want to do like web scraping, you want to get some particular data from a website, right? It's very useful in this case, right? So there are three, basically, three things you can actually do with the download tool. You can um, uh, download a single file from your website or your online location, and you can also download binary large objects, which are majorly image files, right? And you can download multiple files at the same time using the download tool. So without talking much, let's get to the Alteryx Designer software. All right, so looking at the Alteryx Designer software. So today, what I want to do is basically I want to get data from this website. So basically, this website is an Australian website for they have a lot of data being uh, saved in here, and probably you want to do a lot of things. Probably you want to do some analysis that has to do with PDF, file formats, CSV, Excel, and the likes. You can just come to this website and then download a few data sets. All right. So, but for today, I want to just pick out one of these files, right, and see how we can download this file and use it in Alteryx Designer. So, in here, if you see this, so I'm just going to expand this a little so you can see very well. Okay, so this is the URL we have in here, right? So I'm going to go straight to the URL here. So here is just looking at the attendance of students. So I'm going to type attendance, all right, and then in the search for that. So okay, so we have different data sets for attendance in here. So the one I'm interested in is let's just pick this. Okay, so this is the data in here, and this is like the description by the website. So you can see the field, the title of the data set, right? You can see the language it is written in, and then you can see some other description for the data set. So let's look at the data set and see and have an overview of how our data set looks like. All right, so you can see for this site, and this is uh, one major thing why I chose this site, because you have like a preview of your data, right? So you can see in here, you can see how the data looks like, how it is embedded in here, right? So I want to pick this data, right? I want to actually get this data into Alteryx Designer. So how are we going to do that, right? So let's see. So this is actually very useful because they gave us the URL to use it in here. So if you just copy this, right, and this is what I copied, and I have in here in Alteryx Designer. So you can see in here, right? So I'm just going to take this back. You can see this is just the text input tool, and this is just the feed name. So you can name this anything. You can say my site data, right? You can just name it anything, but just to keep it simple, I'm just going to leave it as URL, okay? So, and then going to take this back. So if we had the browse tool in here, right? The browse is basically to check the results or the output of your data, and then we run this. So you can see what we have in here, right? So you can see the file, right? You can see the URL in here. So how do we, get this data from that website? So the first thing you need to understand is since we have the URL, right, which points to that particular file, which is what the attendance rates by school file, right? You can see this URL points exactly to this. So let's confirm this. So if we click on this, so copy link address, and then let's paste this here. Okay. So if I run this, so one of the tests you should always do before you try Alteryx Designer or put in a URL in Alteryx Designer is test if that link is actually working in a web browser. So if I test this, you can see it's downloaded that data set for me, right? And I can, just open it and confirm that that data set is actually correct. So you can see from my Microsoft Excel, I can just preview the data and see that, okay, this is correct. So the first thing you need to do is what? Test that that link is actually working in a web browser. So you can choose any web browser of your choice, Safari, Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, and the likes. All right, so that's the first step you need to do. So after doing that, go return to Alteryx Designer and then check for your download tool. So you can either search for the download tool in here or go to the developers tool palette. So if you come here, you can see several tools we have in here. You have the Apache Spark code tool, and you have the Python tool in here where you can code in Python and bring into Alteryx. So today we're just going to be looking at the download tool. Later I'll talk about these other tools. All right, so the download tool, and we'll drag it in here, right? You should know that for each tool we have in Alteryx, there are different configurations for each of these tools. All right, so going forward, we see, so we're going to do some configurations for this tool in here. So this field is to point to your URL field, right? Your URL link, the link, right? So, and remember, we named this URL. So if I name this something else, let's say my data, right? And then I come in here. So you can see I'm to pick my data as the field that contains my my URL. So for now, I'll leave these other tabs as the default value, right? So just leave them as the default value, right? And then we're going to click string, all right? So my next tutorial, I'm going to be talking about using the blob and also using this option, all right? So watch out for that. So clicking string, and if we run this, so just click on run. You can click on F5 on your keyboard. Okay, so we have 3 fields returned, right? And just 1 record. So you can see 3 fields returned and 1 record. So one thing you need to note is that all of the data that will be, returned by this download tool will actually be embedded in this download data field, right? So if you click on this, for example, and then you click on yourself here to view this embedded data. So you click on self here, so you can see what we have in here. So you can see school number, school name, type of school, and the likes, right? And you can see some of this data here. So if you compare with what we have in here, this, okay, if you compare, you can see, right? So you can see what we have in here. So okay, so I'm just going to click this. Okay, school number. Okay, so school name and like. So you can see that's what we have in here, right? So that's to show that Alteryx has actually, brought this data in. All right. So moving forward, the next thing you have to do, right, is start passing this data, right? And one major thing you need to understand is your data first of all. Okay, so now if you notice that this is a CSV file, right? Remember when I clicked on this, It's took me here, and you can see here that it's a what? It's a CSV file. And this you have to, consider or have at the back of your mind before you start passing your data. All right. And of course, we know that it's CSV file, which also means a comma separated value file, right? It basically means that your data values are comma separated, right? So bearing that in mind, right? So if we have something like this, so just let me open a notepad. Okay, so let's say we have something like this. Let's see, we have this. So for example, we have ID, comma, school name, right? So, comma, age, for example, right? So if I come here and I say 100 and I say school name is what? Harvard, and then I say age is what? 26, all right? Let's see, 100, let's see, 105, and I say MIT, and then I say 45, okay? So one thing you need to understand first off is your data. Now, if you look at this is a comma separated value format, right? And then it's basically your data, is separated using the comma notation, all right? So, and for this, for every new set of values, right, it is separated by a new line, right? So you honestly need to understand your data first before you even start dragging in tools in Alteryx Designer, right? So bearing that in mind, the first thing you need to know is that these comma CSV files are what they are comma separated, right? So, and then for new values or new records, okay, you have it is separated by what? A new line. So having this or bearing this in mind, right? Next thing you have to do is changing these values in here that you have into rows. So I want to see all the values as rows, right? I want to see like just the way you are seeing this as a different row or record, this as a different row or record. That's what we want to, see, right? So we're going to get to the pass to palette and then drag in our text to column tool, all right? And I think probably somebody say, but I just said rows, right? The text to column tool does not basically mean you can only pass to column. You can actually do that to rows by just clicking on this. And then you can see the configuration of the text to column tool. You can see what's it's asking us which column are we doing the split on, right? So remember that I said all our data is embedded in the what? In the download data field, all right? And then that's what we're going to pick in here, not the my data field. So download data field, all right? And one thing actually should be mindful of is the delimiter. So this can actually change a lot of things in your data processing, all right, your data preparation. So like I said, if you remember, the difference between this record is what's the new line. So we want to actually get that, and then we're going to be having our delimiter as a new line. And how do you represent new line in Alteryx? It's just by using the backslash and the what n, right? So maybe one of these days, I'm going to be talking about how to determine all these special characters and how to do regular expression. All right. So moving on, talking about this. So let's try and run this and see our results. Okay. So if we run this, we'll see our results. So you can see what we have after running this, right? So you can see we have about 522 records, okay? And then you can see our values in here, right? You can see 102, you can see different values, right? So if you check this now, so you can see school number, school name, type of school, the suburb, the postcode, and the likes. You can see this, right? You can see 10, 102, and the likes, right? So if you look at it if you compare with the original data, right? And that's what we have in here, right? So let's see. Okay, so you can see in here, right? You can see what we have in here: 102, 104, 106, 107, 111. So if you compare, right, you can see. But then we don't have them. We don't have this data in columns, right? We still have them on the line basis, right? Just like the way we have it in here. All right. So what are we going to do next, right? We're still going to, repeat this text to column 2, right? So we can drag this here, and then what exactly are we going to do? Remember that your fields, right, are comma separated. Remember, we're working with a comma separated field format, right? So if you click on this, and so we're still working on this, the download data field, all right? So be mindful of the field you are actually clicking on, and then want to separate on a comma. But just before you probably choose the number of columns and the likes, all right? We can just basically just check in here and see how many columns you actually have, right? So you can actually just check and see how many columns we have for our data, okay? So, and let's see if you have the description here, or you can just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 11, 12, 13, right? So you can see we have 13 column or 13 fields. Okay, let's see if we have that in the description. So let's see. Okay, all right. So you can see, I don't think it's specified anywhere in the description. But then you can always count, do a count of the number of columns you have. All right. So moving on and checking this. So we want to separate it into 13 columns. So we're going to just type in 13 in here. All right. So, and you can see this other configuration for the text to column 2. You can see here extra characters. So what this basically means is that if we have more than 13 columns, right, what happens to the rest? So this is just basically saying put all the remaining columns, if they are more than 13, to in the last column. All right. So if we see drop extra with warning, right? When we run the workflow, we're going to see some warning notification that some columns, have been dropped. Okay. And if we click this, it's not going to return any warning to us. And if we click on the error, it's not going to run if we have more than 13 columns. So that's basically how this works. Okay, so if you click this, and for example, so let's try and see this. Okay, so if we run this, for example, okay, so you see what we have in here, right? You see what we have in here. So you can see that this is actually very awesome. So, right now, but you can, if you notice, you see that this in here is having some quotes. So, and that's how our data is, right? So we can actually clean that later on. But then let's see. So you can see from what we have in here, you can see we have some fields we are not interested in. So we can actually just quickly remove that by using the select tool. So if I just come to the select tool in here and then drag this. So I don't think I need this field again. I do not need this field again. I do not need this field again. And you can always remove unknowns. So let's add the browse tool again to see the difference between this and this. So let's run this, or hit the F5 button, right? So now you can see what we have in here, right? So you can see, right? You can see this is the 13th column, right? And then if we compare to what we have in here, right? So just click on this again. So you can see ID school, you can see this. So if I just scroll down and then we compare, so I'm just going to scroll up again. Okay, so you can see in here we have, so you can see, okay. So let's see, longitude and latitude, right? So you can see longitude and latitude. But then you realize that our field is starting from the first record, right? This is not supposed to be so. These are supposed to be headers, right? Or what you call column name or field name, right? But then we have the download data 1, data 2 to 13 as our column name, which is what we do not want that. We don't want to see that. Okay. So how can you adjust that, right? There's a tool in Alteryx called the dynamic rename tool, right? You can always use that to adjust something like this. So you can see Alteryx is actually a beautiful tool where you can do a lot of things in here. So if you drag the dynamic rename tool in here, all right, and then you just plug this in. Of course, we have two anchors for the dynamic rename tool, but you can always use one. This just basically depends on the configuration you are looking at. Okay, so what we want to basically do in here is, if you look at this, the rename mode, what I want to basically do is to make this field our header field, right? So we can say take field name. So you can see from these options, we can see take field name from first row of data, right? That's what we have. That's what we want to do, right? So we can just check this dynamic or non fields, and then let's add our browse tool in here, and let's see. Okay. So you see what we have in here, right? See what we have in here, right? So you can see how we have successfully taken our data from the website into Alteryx Designer. So you can see we can now start cleaning up this data. So you can see the codes for each of these. We can actually start cleaning this. And since the code is on each of these field, we can just probably use a multi-field formula. But looking at the multi-field formula will be another day. So I hope you've been able to learn how to bring a single file from a website into Alteryx Designer using the tools in Alteryx. Okay, so that will be all for today's video, and thank you for watching, and please subscribe to this channel. All right, see you next time.